Okay, hello everyone. My name is Tyler Coleman. I'm a vice president with Sterling State Bank, who is one of the sponsors tonight. I'm also the host of Minnesota Stories, which is a podcast, which I encourage you to look up on, if you have an iPhone, on the podcast app there. It's very easy to find. Interviewing people in Minnesota with stories that I find interesting. It's the most broad title you could possibly have, while being Minnesota, I guess, Minnesota Stories. But it's allowed me to have some very interesting conversations. None so far, I think, that will be as interesting as the one tonight. Most people in here, I would expect, know Garwin McNeilus, the fact that he started and grew McNeilus Truck Manufacturing to be the largest manufacturer of concrete mixer trucks and garbage trucks in the United States. But we'll let him tell that story. I'm going to quick tell my personal story. The first time I met Garwin, first time I had a conversation with him, I met him on New Year's Eve, I think it was 2008, and I was attending at the house of his son, Denzel McNeilus, because I was interested in dating Garwin's granddaughter, Christina McNeilus at the time, who is now my wife and the mother to my 3 children. So Garwin has to like me because I keep producing kids that are related to him. But what I remember from that talk is that I actually flew from Canada and landed here at the Rochester airport, December 31st, and it was just covered in snow. And when I came to the house, I made mention, I was like, yeah, when I was flying in, it looked like a barren wasteland. Garwin is nothing if not a proud Minnesotan. And he had a look on his face as if, you Canadian come in here and call my space a barren wasteland. And he says, this is the breadbasket of America. We feed a third of the world. So I was immediately terrified and felt like hiding in the corner. But we've had many great conversations since then, and I'm looking forward to the one that we're having today. So at this time, I'd like to invite Garwin McNeilus to the stage.
Well, thank you, Tyler. It's hard to keep these Canadians away when you have a pretty granddaughter. But it's good to be here, and as I come back and I look in this building, I used to play basketball here about 65 years ago. So once upon a time, when they say legend, that means someone that has been. But it's a joy to be here. It's a privilege to be here and to talk about entrepreneurs. Now, when I was young, I couldn't even spell it. But when you're hungry, you become an entrepreneur. So that's kind of
that's how we got into it. Well, yeah. You mentioned your youth. Maybe let's get into that a little bit. I don't know if everybody knows, and I don't even know the answer to the questions that I'm asking today. I'm looking forward to hearing them. But kind of, where did you grow up, and what kind of early entrepreneurial experiences did you have?
Well, I moved up here of course, my folks did. And when I was 7 to 8 years old, we moved up from Iowa, and we moved up here to be next to the Mayo Clinic. We're here because of the Mayo Clinic. My mother had 5 open heart surgeries at the Mayo Clinic. One of the first. That's back when they went through the side. In fact, probably a more direct route than today for some of us. But Mom had to be in the Mayo Clinic, and she averaged 1 month a year of her life in St. Mary's. And St. Mary's and the Mayo Clinic were good to us. My dad was a junk man. He had a junk truck, and he went up and down the alleys. We bought junk. We went from farm to farm, and I and my brother were the helper. So we had an early beginning of bargaining. We'd buy scrap, we'd buy batteries, we'd break batteries, and the things that in those days it was junk man, then it become a scrap man, now it become a recyclable person. But same thing. So we grew up here. I lived in Dodge Center. My dad moved around this area quite a bit. We lived in Cherry Grove. We lived in Lanesboro. We lived in Nelson, Owatonna, all over this area. But Dodge Center was home. And I've been there for, seems like forever now.
And you were moving because your father was being so successful and becoming very wealthy?
No, my dad remained a one-man junk man for a long time. And you know, when I got older, I asked Dad, why did you never take a day off? And I never knew what a day off was, never knew what a holiday was. We worked Christmas, we worked every day. He says, because I owed the Mayo Clinic money. And many times the Mayo Clinic forgave our bill. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the various supporting the Ronald McDonald House, other places. I've walked the alleys trying to find the cheap room so we could stay here. And so I worked there, I went to school. Then I quit school. My junior year, or maybe it was my
junior
first
year of college?
senior. No, it was my first senior year.
Senior year of college?
What's that?
Are you talking your senior year
No,
of college?
no. We're in high school. And I escaped that higher education. But I believe in it. I had quit school. I was in the scrap business. And I came home one weekend, and my mother says, why don't you go back to school? I thought, okay. So I went to a little boarding school down in Nevada, Iowa. It's where I met my sweetheart. And then came back here to Dodge Center, and that's how I got there.
So I have heard bits and pieces of stories, but wasn't there stories of when you were at your boarding academy of actually making money?
Yeah, I did pretty good there. They charged tuition, and so I made a contract for everything that moved on the school pretty near. Yeah, so much per inch of snow to be shoveled, and then I'd sub it out. And I did janitor work, and I was night watchman, and I carried sick trays, and I raised the flag, and all the things there. I contracted them. So I made my way through school. My folks were sponsoring another girl. I made her way through school, and they wrote me a check at the end of the school year. When you're in the scrap business and you're dealing in the alleys and dealing with scrap and all that, you get kind of used to making things happen. But it was a good time.
So you met your now wife.
Yes.
While you were there, and the statement of there's always a good woman behind every great man has never been more true than in your life. I'm a very big fan of your wife, as I know you are too.
Yeah.
I don't know how you accomplished that.
Well, let me tell you.
Sure.
That was one of the best deals I ever made. You know, she was down at the end of the library on the table, and I hadn't met her. So I hired a guy, for a quarter to take mistletoe over and hold over her head. So then I come around here, he held the mistletoe up, and of course, that's how we met. So it cost me 25 cents, but it's been a good deal. And you know, we've been married 60 years now, last week, and I remembered it. And we can still look in each other's eyes and see the one we married. And the lights are on in our house. So it was a good, it's been a sweetheart.
I think you got a really good deal there.
Yeah.
So after high school, as you said, you didn't go on to any further education. I take it, so you started to work. Maybe tell the story of coming back here and starting working.
Yeah, I came back to Rochester. I was going to school in Nevada, Iowa, and I had an apartment right over here, 2 blocks away, right straight west. used to be a nursing home right over here behind here. That was kind of a focal point of us young guys.
A nursing home?
No, nursing school.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Hey,
Big difference.
at my age, you get turned on with the nursing home. But back then, you know. No, I just lived over here 2 blocks, and I was 18, and I was walking by over here 2 blocks away, right across where they're building that new hotel, right across the street there, and they were digging footings for a new concrete plant. And that was about 35 pounds ago, so I got a job running a jackhammer, digging the footings for the ready-mix plant. Well, I worked there as they were constructing it. Then I became run-up material, became a truck driver, and I ended up being their bookkeeper for Rochester Ready Mix, and I enjoyed it. But you know, when it's in that you want to be in business, you can't get it out. It's kind of like wanting to come home or something. And I wanted to be in business for myself. So that's when I went to Dodge Center and started a ready mix plant. Now, it was very primitive. There was 1 truck, I was the driver, my wife was the bookkeeper, she took the phone calls, and I drove truck and delivered concrete. And my old boss was good for me, Chuck Walters, and with Ray Aarons I worked for. They're really good. They helped me a little bit when my truck would break down, maybe haul some concrete for me. And then in the wintertime, I would hire out as a welder because I was shut down in the winter, and I had 2 kids by that time. And, you know, you had to put bread on the table. Well, that went along for a couple years, and I wanted to buy another truck. And I went to one bank, and they wouldn't lend me the money. I went to another bank, and I went to Austin, and they said, yes, we'll lend you some money. And I went to an auction, and there were 3 trucks. And they auctioned them off for the amount of money I had borrowed. So I bought all 3. I took them home. Then I put ads in the paper, and I sold 2, and I got mine for nothing. And I thought, this beats driving truck. So I went in the used truck business, concrete. And that went along quite nicely for a while. I was buying a lot of them in the south and selling them in the north, and it was successful. So then I started building parts for them. And I started in an old chicken coop. They had a Campbell's soup where they brought all their chickens in at night. But in the daytime, they weren't there, so the guy would let me build parts in there. In fact, my kid's first job was to pick the feathers out of the paint, because it was pretty primitive in those days. But you know, when you're starting, you can't have everything perfect. And that went along for nicely. Then a friend of mine down in Texas said, why don't you become a distributor for a mixer, new, and sell new? He says, that's better than used. And I thought, oh, okay. So I became a distributor for T.L. Smith mixers. And they were out of Milwaukee at the time. And I was buying new trucks. And now when you buy new trucks from the factory, you have 90 days to pay for them. So I was buying these trucks, and one day in come 90 new Ford trucks. And what happened? They were supposed to give me so many a month. And all these trucks in 90 days, I could add up 2 and 2, and I didn't make 4.
How many had you been receiving?
What's that?
How many had you been receiving before that, monthly or quarterly?
5.
Sure. So 90 is a lot more.
I was being 5 to 10 at the most at that time there. So I went down to the factory where where I was getting my mixers from, and now at the time I was building parts. I mean, I was fabbing, I'm building replacement parts. And I said, I got to have more mixers. I've got all these trucks. I can't pay for them. I got to get them. I got to get them mounted. I got to sell them. And I said, if I don't, I'll go broke. Be real frank. And they said, well, we can't do anything. We're busy. And I said, well, let me build parts for there and fill in or something. No, we can't do that. We can't do that. And we sat around a big fancy table. And I said, well, if you don't give me mixers, I'm going to go home and build my own. And the guy, the president, got up, come over, he thumped me on the chest. He says, you think you can do it, you go ahead. Well, I went home, 60 days, I built my first mixer. And I had to.
And that's the part of the story that I just kind of envisioned, like a comic book origin story. Somebody saying, you're so smart, why don't you build them yourself? And like that,
Oh,
and
yeah.
a kapow. And then that's what started the full manufacturing of the trucks.
We went home and we took some parts we had from them and from us, and we put together and we started building mixers. Now, when we started building mixers, there were 9 manufacturers, and we were number 10 in North America. And through the growth of the company and so forth, when we got through, there was 1. And how do you become number 1? You become number 1 by being obsessed with quality, obsessed with the customer's number 1. Now, I'll back up a little bit. We started building mixers, and then in 1980, my son Denzel joined the company, and at that time, we were building mixers, and we decided to donate to charity for other projects, $250 a mixer. And that year, our business doubled. And the next year, we put some more, and it went up again. And we thought, we got the best thing going here. And we started being involved in schools and orphanages and that all over the world, in different places at that time, and we still are. And we were blessed. We worked hard, though, because, the harder you work, the more you get blessed. And I believe in helping others, and I encourage each of you, be involved in here. You all have the gift of time. Everyone has the gift of time to give, to help these other things in Rochester, which make it such a beautiful place to live. But our business kept going and going, and then we decided, well, what can we do? How can we diversify? Well, we looked at this thing and this thing that didn't fit. I looked at other factories, and most of them were terrible. We believe in a real clean factory and organized. And if you come to my grandson's factory that I'm working at now, we sweep with a dust mop. Now that tells you how we keep it. And I believe in that, and I really like the working person. My hat goes off to them. They're very, very near to me and dear to me. But the business, we looked at what could we do. Well, what do? We bend iron, we're trucks, and we're hydraulics. So then we went in the refuge business. And that went along very good. We became 65% of the world market, or the U.S. market on that. We were much higher than we North America and mixers, we were pretty much it. They had a few made in Canada, and a friend of mine made a few over in New York. But we pretty well had it. The business west of the Mississippi, there were only 2 people we didn't sell. So but you do that by having the best product. You're not going to do it any other way.
How did you get the best product? Was it through hiring a lot of engineers?
Never had one of them. That was my job.
Okay.
Yeah. You just got to, first you get the customers in, and you say, tell me what you don't like. And tell me how you do it better. And if you take everything they don't like and fix it, there's not much left. But you got to be obsessed that today we can build it better than yesterday. And there's always a better way. The nice thing about manufacturing, there's always a better way. You can bend it better, you can form it better. There's just flows. There's so much you can do. I've never been in a business where where there's an opportunity all the time. But
realize I'm just kind of adding things. Instead of, you're doing a great job of telling the story, but, I've talked to you before about, hey, how's your day going? And you have a genuine excitement, even today, at the young age of, are you 55 now?
Yeah.
An actual excitement, because you said you worked at your grandson's factory. You still have an excitement, not over making a whole bunch of money, but of making the factory more efficient or making something a little bit better in the mixer truck itself.
Absolutely. I get a high out of doing it better. It's just like you give me some go juice or something. And I just think life, you should do things better every day, and every day is an opportunity. And if you're in business, that goes in your business, your personal life, or whatever. I just feel, be productive.
So the way that you tell the story, or that you're telling the story today, it's through working hard, it's getting the input of your customers, it's seizing opportunities, but there had to have been some really hard times. Are there any examples that you can give of?
You better believe I have. In 1982, interest rates was 20%. I got stuck with $29 million worth of trucks I was paying 20% interest a month on. And I could do my arithmetic, and I could tell my interest was running over $400,000 a month. And worst case became best. And I stuck with all these trucks, but I come up with a good advertising scheme. That's back, you might remember it, the Falkland War down in South America. And I did have an export order that was canceled, so I put a big X across the Falkland Islands and put export order canceled. I got all these specials, and I showed pictures of all my trucks. Now, Texas was still doing pretty good down there because of the oil business. And I took a loss of $10,000 to $12,000 on every truck. But I had to stop the meter. And I had to stop from paying interest. What I didn't know, I sold out my inventory and dug out of it. It put my product in everybody's fleet for the first time. And they liked it. So looking back on it, it helped me. But at the time, I had a nice whole head of hair. Wasn't there afterwards. So yes, I've had many a sleepless night.
So you obviously, even hearing you talk about it today, there's a passion of making things better. You eventually got to the point where you sold McNeilus Truck Manufacturing.
Yes.
So now I think with entrepreneurship, a lot of the thought is, okay, I need an idea, I need some startup capital, so I can get to an exit. Was it your plan to eventually sell it, or what happened that brought you to that decision?
Okay, we had branched out in the banking and the concrete business. My old boss over here sold me his ready-mix plant when he retired. So we had those going. And we wanted to expand, and I thought, well, I'll go over and buy Oshkosh Truck. So I went over to Oshkosh, and I said, I'd like to buy your company. And they said...
And you had bought other companies before this?
Yeah, I could have bought it.
No, you had bought other companies as well?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we had the two other divisions, the banks and the concrete.
Yep.
And the aggregate. So I went over to buy Oshkosh Truck, and they said, well, we'd like to buy you. Now, if you offer on us, we have to go public because we're a public company and you're private. Would you talk to your shareholders? So shareholders was my wife and my boys, so it wasn't, didn't have to call a big meeting. And we talked about it, and we talked about the future, and you have to, would our grandkids get along? Happiness is the most important thing. It's the most important thing in success. And should we sell? And it was agonizing. And we decided, okay, we would. So I went back. I gave them a price. They said, well, could you excuse us for a little bit? And they went 20 minutes. They come out and said, we'll take it. So I sold the company. Quite simple. Didn't do any long negotiations or anything like that. And it was purely you transfer the money and I hand you the keys. So we didn't have to do any workout or anything like that. And that's how we happened to sell.
Seems like a simple decision for a very large company.
Well, I don't look back. You make a decision with what you have at the time and you go forward, and I don't drive in the rearview mirror. I believe it was the thing to do, and life has been good since. And
you rode off into the sunset, got some golf clubs.
No, I retired for about a day and a half. And even today, I was telling someone here, my wife said, if you ever retire, let me know so I can go get a job. I have no intention of retiring. I could be down south, warm and lonely, but I like it in Dodge Center. I like Good Morning Grandpa, and I like at my age living in the shadow of the Mayo Clinic. That's very important when you get older. Some of you don't think you'll ever get there, but I didn't at one time either. But I worked I thought I'd stay in Oshkosh forever, or in the factory, but that didn't work out. So then I built a place just south of town, not knowing what to do, and I put up the flag. It ripped. You know how they do in the wind? So I put up another one, and it ripped. So then I sewed the edges, and I said, I can make better flags or something. But then I thought, wind. So then I thought, well, if we got wind here, why not go in the wind business? So I went out to Pipestone. I looked at the wind towers out there, and I come back and said to my wife, let's go for a little ride to western Minnesota. She says, western Minnesota? Well, I took her out there, and we had the wind turbines, and I said, I'd like to get, some. She says, yeah, you should put some up. So we come back to Dodge Center, and we had a farm just south of there, and she said a few. I didn't know what that meant. And so we put up our wind farm. So I just drove along. I didn't know you were supposed to hire a project engineer or something, and I don't criticize it. I drove the pickup, and my grandson held the measuring wheel out, and we laid out and built our own wind farm. And I built the wind farm for one thing. We're in the I have orphanages and a blind school, some things of that nature, and you have to endow them. And I can do my arithmetic at my age. So the wind farm over there, most all of them go to support children. So it's some people don't like them. To me, it's clink, clink, clink. And, but that supports my orphanages. And that's why I put up the wind farm. And we had another one down by Adams, and I sold it. But I enjoy the renewable energy business. It's nothing that's fantastic, but it's constant, and I think having energy to support children, it's warms my heart there.
Maybe if we could just expound on that a little bit. So the second story that also made me want to roll into a ball is that first night I said, oh, I remember a friend of mine worked at the McNeilus language school, and immediately you and Denzel started saying that's the worst project that we ever worked on, or there was something wrong with it. I was like, oh, this is going perfect. But it was because you didn't want your name on it. So, it's known that you do philanthropy, but maybe talk through a little bit about kind of what put that on your heart, and then what kind of projects that you've done.
Well, we don't like to have our name on anything. We were in Cuba did a lot of work in Cuba, and they were putting a big plaque with our name. My wife had them chip it off. It isn't the size of that, it's the motive. And some people can do more, some people can do less, but it all goes together. We've been involved in building all through Africa. I have a real soft spot for schools, orphanages. I built a hospital in Chad. In fact, the Mayo Clinic's just donating a bunch of medical equipment that I'm shipping to Chad next week for the hospital. And I feel that you give back to society. And the way you can help in these other countries and that is education. Even though I now have a degree in that, I really believe in education and education in there. So we work there, we work in our country too. I have a little factory over there, what we call one-day schools, one-day churches. We put out 300 this year out of there. And when we do a school, to me, is 12 classrooms. And we build them, we can put up one classroom a day with desk, everything, and bring the kids in. It's kind of neat to go to work in the morning and bring in, 30, 40 kids in the afternoon in your building. And my cousin slits the steel in Dodge Center for me, and he does that, free. And we form it, and it goes in at 100 foot a minute through a form roller. In fact, we're doing them today. Today we're shipping 42 to Tanzania. No, to Zambia. That's going to. Tanzania was last week. And I enjoy that. I've been blessed, and my kids each have businesses, and I want to pass on to other people a better life. I believe very much in being active. I'm going to be 82, and I got open another 10 years. My uncle did 93 or 92. You don't have to quit because you're older. That's my point.
Very true. So maybe in conclusion, so this week, this podcast and this event is part of a week in entrepreneurship here in Rochester. To somebody that was thinking about starting a business or was thinking about being an entrepreneur, I guess, what advice could you leave them with today?
I would encourage anyone that wants to be in business, whether it be large or small or whatever, pursue it. Go for it. Be prepared to work more than 40 hours a week. It ain't gonna work. But you won't mind it. But have another purpose besides money. Have a purpose. Yes, financial is how you gauge it, but have a purpose of how you can benefit other people, how you can have happiness. And your sweetheart, whether you be a lady or a man, each other, they have to be of one accord. Very difficult if one wants it and one doesn't. You got to support each other. But I would really encourage people, if they want to be an entrepreneur, and that can be in many forms, go for it. Live the American dream. Because, when you look at it, only in America could something like this happen to someone like me. And we live in a wonderful area. I told Tyler this is the pathway to heaven when he come here. I like Rochester.
Well, thank you very much, Garwin, for joining us. I want to thank Sterling State Bank, Collider Foundation, Castle Community, and all of you for joining us for this podcast. And once again, let's thank Garwin for sharing his story with us.
Thank you.